Let me start by saying that I am not a person who believes in supernatural events, but what I experienced that night defies any rational explanation. It has been a long journey, and I was weary when I found a little rest outside Oak Ridge. The parking lot was poorly lit, and there was a flashing light near the utility entrance. The surrounding area was shrouded in pitch darkness, but my anxiety overshadowed any apprehensions. This happened after my previous scary encounter, so I made sure to double-check the doors closed securely this time. After using the facilities, I returned to my truck, making sure everything was securely closed before retiring to my bed. Throughout the night, I was kept awake several times by knocking on the doors of my truck, but whenever I looked outside, there was no one in sight. Growing anxious, I grabbed my gun and went out to investigate. I floated around the truck, but there was no sign of any intruder. Oddly, when I peeked through the curtains, the cabin lights were on as if the doors had opened. But the moment I looked, they were off, and the doors remained closed. When dawn broke, I was completely exhausted from staying up all night. Determined to use the facilities, I approached the building, only to find it closed and in disrepair, as if it had been abandoned for years. This baffled me, because I only used it the night before when it seemed to work perfectly. One of the windows was even boarded up, adding to the spooky atmosphere. As if that wasn't alarming enough, on my way back to the truck, I noticed a small cemetery across from a nearby field. I could not get away from this place fast enough and hastened to the next town, called Melville, where I hoped to find some normality. My ride took me across Oregon from Eugene to Portland with my load. After passing through the quaint town of Maplebrook and approaching the mountain passes, it gets dark. That dark period when the sun is about to set and long shadows stretch across the road. As I was driving my truck through a wooded area, about a mile away, I saw something large on the side of the road. At first I assumed he had killed on the road, perhaps a deer, for it was not uncommon in those parts. But as I got closer, I noticed another figure beside the animal, crouching down on it, apparently feeding on the corpse. The setting sun cast a strange silhouette on the figure, and I could hardly make out its contours. It appears to be a humanoid creature covered in brown fur. I couldn't believe my eyes, but I was sure I saw something out of the ordinary. There were a few cars on the road that night, but none of them stopped to investigate. I reached for the disposable camera that I always carry with me in emergencies, and quickly snapped a picture. However, by the time I got off my truck, the creature had disappeared into the shadows. When I thought about what I saw, doubt crept in. Perhaps it was a trick of the fading light, and my tired mind played a cruel trick on me. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that something strange and otherworldly was lurking in that forest that night. A few years ago, I was a long-distance truck driver, but eventually I transitioned to local deliveries. During my time on the open road, I've encountered some nerve-wracking situations that most people would find intimidating. However, in my view, they were truly terrifying. Late one night, I parked my truck in a truck stop around midnight. Exhausted from a long day on the road, I decided to skip dinner and headed straight to the back to get some much-needed sleep. However, due to my fatigue, I must have forgotten to lock the doors, and about 2 o'clock in the morning, I was suddenly awakened by the cabin lights. Panicking, I reached for the bat I usually kept under the bed and pulled back the curtain. To my surprise, I found a little girl sitting in the front seat. She couldn't have been older than 14 and looked terrified. Her big brown eyes filled with fear as she begged me not to kick her out. She quickly explains that she was kidnapped a few days ago and has been on the road with some dangerous men ever since. My heart went to her, and I knew I had to help. Although my first instinct was to call the police, she begged me not to. The reason is that she ran away from an abusive stepfather, and returning to her home would only cause her more harm. Caught between a rock and a hard place, I sympathized with her situation and finally agreed to lock the doors for safety and decided to let her call her aunt in the morning, who would come to her rescue. When I tried to go back to sleep, I woke up again around 4 a.m. and heard a conversation between the girl and an unfamiliar male voice. Fear gripped me when I realized they were discussing what to do with me. The girl seemed to convince the man not to hurt me, saying that they had already taken everything they needed and that they should leave before I woke up. When I tried to retrieve my bat to protect myself, I realized it was missing. Feeling weak, I lay anxiously, waiting to see their next move. Fortunately, the the girl seemed to convince her partner not to hurt me, and I saw them get out of the truck and speed away in a pickup truck. It dawned on me that she had played a part in a deceptive plan to deceive unsuspecting drivers. She will gain their trust, ensure they are defenseless, and then signal her partner to steal them. The fact that I fell for such a ruse left me feeling ashamed, and I wasn't completely honest with my insurance agent about the accident. Looking back, the most terrifying part of the story was not only the dangerous situation I found myself in, but the realization that anyone could be a target for deception and manipulation, regardless of their experience or background. This incident was a profound lesson for me, and I vowed to be more vigilant and careful in the future. A few years ago, when I was in my early 40s, I discovered my passion for trucking. Growing up, my dad was a trucker, and I cherished the memories of riding with him in the cab during my childhood. I knew that this was the career for me as well, and I loved the idea of traveling across the country for work, feeling like I was on a never-ending adventure. Fortunately, my husband shared the same love for trucking, and since we had no children, it was the perfect profession for us to pursue together. During long trips, we took turns driving. He preferred the nighttime drives to observe wildlife, while I enjoyed the daytime drives and the changing scenery. As a smaller woman, I always remained cautious and aware of my surroundings, especially when stopping at truck stops where I encountered some unsavory characters. While it didn't usually bother me, I always carried pepper spray and a knife for added protection, and I felt secure knowing my husband was there to support and protect me if needed. One particular incident still haunts me to this day. It was during the day when we made a stop at a truck stop. My husband was dozing in the cab, so I ventured into the store by myself, which was not uncommon. As I approached the store, I noticed a couple of guys sitting at a table outside, but I didn't pay much attention to them. While browsing inside, I had a persistent feeling of being watched, though I couldn't pinpoint anything specific. Still, I decided to head towards the restrooms at the back of the building. As I reached the restroom area, one of the guys I had seen outside appeared on the other side, startling me. His appearance immediately set off warning signals. He was wearing overalls, a stained shirt, and had few teeth. He approached me, asking if I was someone named Missy, to which I smiled and replied, "No, sorry, you must be mistaken." Despite my attempt to walk away, he blocked the restroom door and started asking more questions, making me increasingly uncomfortable. I remained calm but assertive, and when he grabbed my arm, I quickly pulled away and firmly told him not to touch me. Ignoring his advances, I walked out of the store without buying anything, and as I headed back to my truck, I noticed his friends were no longer outside. I instinctively reached for my pepper spray just in case, but as I passed by another truck, he grabbed my hips from behind, attempting to pull me back. Reacting immediately, I turned around, elbowed him, and sprayed him in the face with the pepper spray. He yelled expletives as he tried to wipe his face, while I rushed back to my truck. Fortunately, my husband had heard the commotion and was ready to help, but I signaled him to stay inside, and we left the truck stop quickly. I shared the incident with my husband, who was understandably upset that he couldn't be there to protect me. However, we both knew that it was the worst encounter we had experienced, and the only time I had to use the pepper spray. A few years later, we found ourselves making another delivery near the same location. Every time we saw the "Welcome to Specific State" sign, it sent shivers down my spine, reminding me of that terrifying encounter. While eating at a nearby diner during this visit, the TV showed the local news reporting the capture of a kidnapper. As I watched the mugshot, my stomach dropped. It was the same guy. He had tried to abduct a girl who looked strikingly similar to me, but thankfully, she managed to escape. The similarity between me, his ex-wife, and the victim was chilling. I shared this information with my husband, and we hoped that this arrest meant the end of his dangerous attempts. We were both grateful that my encounter had not escalated into something worse, and that the other girl managed to escape. This experience reinforced the importance of staying vigilant and aware of our surroundings at all times. It also highlighted the significance of personal safety measures, such as carrying pepper spray, especially for smaller individuals like myself. Trucking remained our passion, but we made sure to be cautious and prepared during our travels. This incident occurred in the heart of the New Mexico desert. I stopped at a remote rest area to take a break and use the restroom. When I got outside, I noticed a man in his late 30s or early 40s circling my truck, which was the only vehicle around. His behavior was strange, and I warned him of his intentions. When he inquired where I was going, I gave a vague answer, suggesting I was on a cross-country delivery service, and then quickly returned to my truck to avoid further interaction. A few miles down the road, a blue Ford Mustang pulls up from behind, its engine clearly tuned for speed. At first I thought it was just another vehicle passing by, but to my surprise, it was the same person from the remaining station, accompanied by 2 other people. The Mustang swerved in front of me, and he braked abruptly in an attempt to crash. You acted quickly, narrowly avoiding collisions. As I was driving, I peeked and saw the 3 guys inside. Sensing danger, I hit the gas pedal, trying to escape from the menacing trio. However, they pursued me relentlessly, attempting the same dangerous maneuvers over and over again. It was like they were trying to recreate scenes from a high-octane movie. After an intense and long hunt, I decided it was time to take action to protect myself. When they pulled in front of me again, I strategically swerved, gently slammed into the rear bumper of my Mustang, and sent it spinning out of my way. I took the opportunity to speed away and drive as fast as I could until I got to the next town. Once I got there, I immediately called the local authorities to report the serious encounter. In the aftermath of that dreadful experience, I decided to equip myself with a revolver for the sake of personal safety, choosing a more effective means of defense than the racket I had previously carried.